Now the Mazda 3 was a replacement of the 323, which is kind of a chintzy, cheap little car. I mean, it could run okay, they had transmission problems and everything, but this is a big seller for Mazda now. They're selling millions of these things. It's pretty good value, actually, and this guy was really smart. He bought it used for 20 grand. You can see it's in excellent shape. There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying a car used and saving even more money. A low mileage thing, 30,000 miles or so on it. There's plenty of life left in this car. And you can see the interior. Chrome, I mean, they are nice cars. Sunroof, and under the hood, it's got the Scotty Active technology 4-cylinder engine. And in this case, it's not turbocharged. So, that's actually a good thing if you want long life. Rather than go the route of a tiny engine, this is a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine. A nice size, they got plenty of get up and go, but not being turbocharged, they're going to last a lot longer. There's less stress on the engine. And being all-wheel drive, you're never going to get stuck in the snow. It's going to handle better in the rain. It's a system you don't have to do anything except drive it. Now, as I said in the past, Mazda's had problems with their automatic transmissions, but Toyota owns a certain part of Mazda. They share a lot of technology, and that's not the case with Mazdas anymore. So you don't have to worry about the engine lasting a long time, but the tranny breaking down. That's not a problem that these have. If you know anything about the old 323s, their automatic transmissions were garbage. I would see them break all the time on customers' cars. They'd usually end up junking the car. They didn't want to spend thousands fixing it. This, as you can see by the looks, it's a much better looking car. I mean, there's an old one. See how ugly they were? I mean, these are nice looking cars, and they have much better engineering than the old ones did too. For the money, you're getting your money's worth as far as I'm concerned with these. I always get people that say, why did you buy Mazda instead of a Toyota or a Honda? And invariably, the answer would be, it costs a lot less. The advantage of buying a vehicle like this Mazda that's pretty well made, and we're gonna find out all the interiors when I plug my fancy scan tool in, but the big advantage is Mazda does not have a name like Toyota and Honda. Hence, you are going to pay less money for the car. That's just how it goes. To give you an analogy, the other day a guy brought me the BMW sports car that's exactly the same as the Toyota Supra. Of course, the Toyota Supra isn't a Toyota, it's a BMW. So basically the Supra and the BMW are the same car, but he bought a used BMW version of the Toyota Supra. He got that thing for like 30 grand. If it would have been the Supra, it would have been closer to 45 or 50 because Toyota's got a name and people are like, oh, it's a Toyota sports car. And some people are so stupid, they don't even know that the Toyota Supra is a BMW. It has nothing to do with Toyota. They can give you all the horse manure in the world about, oh, well, this is the difference between them. No, but you can get the BMW cheaper because BMWs have an image of being endless money pits as they age, so their resale values are relatively low. And even though the Toyota Supra and this BMW, the same exact car, he saved a ton of money buying a BMW. It doesn't say Toyota, but it's the same car. Now in this case, it's not the same car, it's the Mazda 3, and it can be an excellent car, but they don't have the image that Toyota and Honda has. Hence, for 20 grand, you can get a really nice car. If this had been an equivalent Toyota, you'd be talking anywhere from 5 to 10 grand more than what he paid. And hey, these things can last a long time. So one of the big selling points of these things are you can, especially used, get a better deal. Now, when you buy stuff new these days, the price differential isn't much in any of them, which really has me wondering, why would anybody buy a Kia? You buy Kias because they cost a lot less back in the day. But now I've seen a Kia equivalent to like a Toyota Corolla. Sometimes the Kia actually costs 500 bucks more. Why the heck would you buy a Kia when you can get a Toyota Corolla as an equivalent car for less money? You have to be insane. Right? But in this case, getting more, and you're actually paying less because Mazda doesn't have that image. Now, he hasn't had a lick of problems with it. You know, he bought it with 30,000 miles on it, so it's not like you expect to have a problem. The one thing you're going to worry about is long life. How is it going to hold up? And from my experience with these things, they hold up quite well. The trannies don't break like the old Mazdas did. The electronics are pretty reliable. And they share a lot of engineering with Toyota now, and it shows. There we go. We're going to analyze this thing. with the fancy scan tool. Okay, read the VIN number, and it's a Mazda 3 2.5 liter. Now it's setting itself up, and while it's setting up, we can see it's got a really nice setup on the dash. Tax in the right place, all the information's right, the speedometer's right in the middle. It's got a nice little monitor there with an interesting fake analog clock. It's digital, but it looks like it's analog. And very comfortable seats too. And as you can see, we can do a full topology of all the CAN systems. So that's doing that. Look, lots of room. That slides all over. It does have the modern garbage that I hate. Electronic parking brakes, but they're all going to that nonsense. So you can do sport if you want to drive like a maniac, play with the speakers. It's a nicely set up car. Unlike its predecessor, the Mazda 323, that was a cheap little runabout. This is a nice car inside. I expected there's no trouble codes. I mean, 34,464 miles. So we'll look at some live data just for kicks, and we know there's not going to be anything wrong with it, but these are Skyactiv systems are relatively complex. They've got all kinds of information, so if you ever buy one, you need a guy like me and a machine like this to fix it if it ever does break. Black is good, red is bad. I'm sure everything's going to be black. Shows you the variable valve timing control, intake and exhaust. It even shows you the commanded fuel rail pressure. Of course, there's no misfires. It even gives you information on the electronic variable air compressor, showing that it's working at 27.85%. Yes, even the air conditioning compressor is run by computers. Everything is computerized. That's how they can get so much power and get decent gas mileage, by even making the air conditioner more efficient. Everything squeezes that last drop of gas out. Even shows you the engine oil level, the engine oil pressure, and even the fuel injected amount, milligrams per cylinder. You get lots of data on these Skyactiv systems. When they do break, you need to understand how it all works. And without a machine like this, you might as well not let anybody under your hood if you got a problem. Unless they know what I know and have a machine like this. And look at this, long-term fuel trim, 0. It even shows you the thermostat monitor heat radiation ratio. I'm telling you, these are complex cars. So let's take it for a spin. So there's a modern car. We gotta turn the dumb parking brake off. I hate those things. Too much complexity. And this is a car that lives on the East Coast. Guess what's gonna happen eventually? The salt will rust the electronic parking brake and cost a fortune to fix. That's why I hate those things. It's got a nice heads-up monitor. It shows we're going 4 miles an hour. You can see we're going 0. Now it shows we're going 1. Nice little heads up. Relatively low to the ground, so the giant bump will go slow. And here we go. Now they call them zoom zooms. They're good for zooming around in. Realize though, it is a short wheelbase, so you're gonna feel bumps. Here's the bumpy roads, and it rides over them fine, but you're gonna feel them because it's a short wheelbase car, and it is all-wheel drive. So, you know, it's not going to ride like a Lexus. It's a sporty little car. Now remember, this is all-wheel drive. Look, it's got the stop sign that it reads, and so we saw that. Cameras galore. People are coming every 2 seconds here. All right, here we go. We'll floor it in. Hey, yes, it zooms. And if you notice, you could barely hear or feel the shift. Extremely well-designed electronic transmission. It shifts like a dream. It's nothing like the old stuff Mazda has. Their engineers have gone a long way. And if you drive like me, you'll see you're always driving too fast because it shows you the speed limit. And I'm always driving over it, so at least your wife can't see it. Because you can't see it sitting over here. If you're a person who does California stops all the time, check it out. It's a heads-up display, and it says stop. Now for a smaller car, hey, it's also pretty quiet inside. The only thing we're hearing here are the dividers on the horrible Rhode Island roads that they don't seem to want to fix. Other than that, it's extremely quiet. A Mazda 3 all-wheel drive, pretty impressive for a $20,000 car that only had 30,000 miles on it. Everything on it works fine. Yes, it's a smaller wheelbase car. It's going to be somewhat rough when you're on bumpy roads. That's just the way small cars are. Plenty of zip without a turbo. Beautiful looking interior, beautiful looking exterior, and unlike the Mazdas of decades ago, they're a lot more solid built. Still, they don't have the image that Toyota or Honda has, so you can get a used one and you can save quite a bit of money and still get an excellent car like he did. This is an 06 Pontiac Vibe, but look what shape it's in. There's my wife's 07 Toyota Matrix, and aside from the skin on the outside, they're exactly the same. As we look inside, that's a 1.8 liter Toyota VV TI, variable valve timing, intelligent. Check this out. Check it out. It's exactly the same. Same engine, same hull. Everything's exactly the same. So basically the same car. Now, body parts, you know, some of them are made over here. And people say, oh, well, Pontiac GM, they didn't paint them as good as Toyota. Well, I have to disagree with this car. Look at this. It's even got a sunroof, which mine doesn't have. Look at that paint. It just pops. And yeah, this paint's still good too. This looks a little worse because his is clean and mine's dirty, but hey, the Pontiac looks brand new. It was taken care of. Mind you, you're gonna have one heck of a time finding one like he did. This thing was like given to a church, the little lady drove it. It's been taken care of in garage. So it's really in immaculate shape. But here's one warning about buying one of these vehicles, which is exactly the same as the Matrix warning. You want to get the 16-valve VVTi engine that is 1.8 liters. Check it out, 1.8 liters. You don't want the bigger, faster 2.4 liter engine for two reasons. One, they get worse gas mileage. But more seriously, a lot of them burn oil. They didn't make the piston rings right. Same engine they put in those Camrys, say 2007. You don't want the 2.4 liter engine because these 1.8s run forever. They have no problems whatsoever. I've seen them with 500,000 miles. Every single Matrix I saw with the 2.4 liter 4 burnt oil. These don't. So, you see a 2.4 liter engine, I wouldn't buy it, but if you're a fanatic, do a compression test and stick your finger in the tailpipe. Tailpipe's oily, it's burning oil. Pull out a couple spark plugs. They got burnt carbon from burnt oil, don't buy it. But really, just don't buy the 2.4 liter. There are millions of the 1.8s out there. So, get that. Now, interesting enough, neither my wife's Matrix or this thing was made in Japan. I mean, the engines and everything were, so it didn't really matter, right? But the Matrix was made in Cambridge, Ontario, and this was made in Fremont, California, which, if you know a little history, decades ago was the worst factory practically in the world. They had all kinds of problems. So, GM shut it down. Toyota went together with GM to build these Vibes there, right? That whole thing fell apart for many reasons. And none of them had to do with the car not being good. Toyota and GM, okay? GM's union labor. Toyota isn't. Toyota didn't want to get involved with GM union labor. They didn't like GM's setup. So they just pulled the plug on the whole deal. Now, they still made for 2-3 years the Matrixes in Cambridge, Ontario, but then they stopped making them, which to me makes no sense. And Matrix lovers are like, why did they stop making them? Why? Well, why? Because Toyota wanted to make more money. These are low-end cars. They don't cost that much. Everybody likes little SUVs today. And what did Toyota do a couple years ago? They came back with the Toyota Corolla hatchback. It's really a Toyota Matrix, but they didn't want to look foolish again, so instead of calling it a Toyota Matrix, they called it the Toyota Corolla hatchback. And look at these pictures, you'll see, yes, it's like a modernized version of the Matrix. And realize that originally the Matrixes were called Toyota Corolla Matrixes, and although you can get the sales figures for all the Pontiac Vibes because it's GM, you cannot get the sales figures for the Toyota Matrix in the United States because Toyota combined the sales with Corollas and made it overall Corolla sales. Because after all, these cars are Toyota Corolla platforms, the same engine as the Corolla, the same transmission, the same brakes. It's just a different body plopped on top of a Toyota Corolla frame. You've got pretty much indestructible engines. And yeah, these are older tech. They have 4-speed automatic transmissions. I want 9-speed, 10-speed, blah, 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 blah. Well, he hasn't checked us yet because he just bought it. But the last time I went to Rhode Island, that thing got 37 miles of a gallon going 75 miles an hour. And you might say, well, Scotty, some of the modern cars don't do that. It'll cruise all day at 80. It's got a top speed of like 114 miles an hour. Who drives that fast anyways, you know? No problems whatsoever. You don't need all the horsepower that many modern cars have. You take a modern Corolla, generally you're lucky if you get 37 miles a gallon on one that's 2-3 years old. That thing's 17 years old. Those things are 2-3 years old. Because they went for horsepower, they're a lot faster. My son gets in the Matrix, oh, it's too slow. He's got a Toyota Corolla S, even with a CVT transmission, and it's quicker, but it gets a little bit less gas mileage. Since these things can run forever. I've seen them with 500,000 miles. Who cares that it's got 50, 60 horsepower or less? It goes plenty fast enough. They'll get you where you're going with no problems at all. This is a baby. It's only got like 80,000 miles on it. He was lucky to find one like this. But you can see, alternator, everything on it is practically original equipment except for the battery. As we look inside, notice one thing. This is why you want to buy cloth seats, okay? This vehicle is 18 years old. Even the side isn't worn yet. The back seat looks like it's never been used. Probably not. Little old lady drove it. And as I said, you can say it's got 86,903 miles. AC still freezing cold. And the radio still works okay. It's got a CD player. Now, that's the thing. This was a Pontiac. And Americans being what they are, this actually had a much better radio than the Toyota Matrix. The Toyota Matrix had an AM, FM with a tape deck that was a piece of crap. So the first thing I did was get an Android. I got an Android Pumpkin. It was like 150 bucks. And it works perfectly fine, right? But this, it's already got a decent radio in it. Like I said, it's got the same 4-speed tranny with overdrive. There's the electric overdrive switch. It's off, now it's on. A nice handbrake. The middle's exactly the same. It's practically the same car as my wife's. The dash here is exactly the same. Barely see anything go wrong with these things, but we'll hook up my giant computer and we'll see exactly what shape it's in. While we're looking up stuff, you can see the dash isn't cracked, it isn't sticky. Sunroof. So far there's no codes. And that's all there been in 2006. It takes a while to do all these scans because the computers are much slower in those days. Well, it's only found one code. Probably won't be much, but we'll take a look at it. The radio. Audio output speaker short to ground. Sounds okay to me. Maybe one speaker is not working all that great, but hey, that's the only thing it found wrong. So let's start her up. Go to the powertrain. We shall look at live data. It's not going to give us as much as a normal one, but hey, mass airflow sensor's pretty normal. It's in closed loop like it's supposed to be. And check it out, the total fuel trim average is 0. Sure, the thing's 18 years old, but it's got perfect fuel trim, right? It's not adding or subtracting fuel. That just shows you how well made these things are. But I mean, you do have to take in consideration. For a Toyota, it may be old, but it's only got 86,903 miles on it. And the engine doesn't burn oil, doesn't have any kind of trouble codes. Those whining that say these are too slow, look at this. I mean, you step on the gas, it starts going. Yeah, it makes a little bit of noise, but hey, that's how these engines are. It took him 9 months to find this car. He looked at Facebook Marketplace every day for 9 months, and some woman beat him to the punch on this, but then the woman didn't show up, and the lady who was selling it said, come on over, and he came over with cash, and he's a smart man. He bought this baby. It's actually in better shape than my wife's. I mean, the paint's better, it's got less mileage on it. It's still barely broken in because it's the 1.8 liter engine. Now we're coming to our little drag strip here, and here we go. It's not a race car, no, but look, it's going. It's not a race car, you know. Look, it cruises perfectly fine. It has a nice ride on smooth roads. When you want to pass somebody, look, we'll go passing gear, floor it. See, the speedometer picks up, not super fast, but it got to 60 pretty quick. These on the Matrix, they're just the same car really, have one fault, and that is you hit bumpy roads, you know you're on bumpy roads. They are not smooth riding over bumps. On a highway, now perfectly smooth, but you hit bumps, you're gonna feel it, and there's nothing you can do about it. These are one of the most perfect cars made for their side other than a rough ride. Look at it, there's the speedometer, there's the tachometer, temperature gauge, gas gauge, everything you can see easily, everything you want to know. Toyota cruise control that never breaks. Now you can see this thing was made for handling corners. It's just a fun car to drive. I got the shifts, all right? You can barely feel that or hear it. I mean, you know, it's pushing on 100,000 miles, but that's a Toyota. I've seen these things with 400,000 miles, and they still shifted just like that. They knew what they were doing when they built these cars. So there you have it. Aside from a rough ride when you hit bumps, it's probably the perfectly designed car. So the vibes on this Pontiac Vibe are pretty good. If you can find one in this shape, I don't know, this might be the only one on the planet like that that's for sale. It had such a weird history of being given to a church, auctioned off. Then a guy bought it for his daughter for a graduation from Purdue University, but she didn't like it because it wasn't wireless. It didn't have everything she wanted for her iPhone, you know? So this guy's happy as can be. He's going to retire. He said he's going to put his golf clubs in it and drive it for the next 20, 30 years. But if you listen to one thing I say, listen to this. Make sure it's got the 1.8 liter engine. Do not buy one with the 2.4 liter engine. That was a mistake. This one wasn't. Lexus, that was 2014. Unfortunately, as you can see on the hood, he's had some suspension work done. He said he fell asleep on the highway and ran into the interim. He had the front struts replaced, wheel bearing, rotor, and that wheel bearing, and the other wheel bearing over there. Now, you can't blame that on the car. These are generally really good cars, the ES. Same basic color, still going strong. The ES series were really well made. They're so well made that they're still making them today. They made them for a long time and they're still making them. They generally sell about 45,000 of them every year in the United States. It's a really stable market because people are always saying, everybody wants an SUV. Let me tell you, everybody doesn't want an SUV. People that want a nice sedan like this, they're not a mass-produced car. They're still all made in Japan. This one was made in Japan. And made in 2014. It's got the V6 with the timing chain. So you don't have to worry about changing the stupid timing belts. They had timing belts for a while, but this is a more modern engine, and they still have very reliable automatic transmissions. Not CVTs, automatic transmissions. 6-speed automatic. You can shift it manually if you want. Doesn't have shifting pedals. You got to shift it by moving this back and forth. And as you can see, you can go eco, you can go normal, or you can go sport. And with that 6-speed automatic transmission, if you're conservative on the highway, you can get 31 miles a gallon in a car that's as fun to drive as this thing is. Now you can see it's 10 years old. There's just basic stuff on the steering, but it's beautiful looking steering column. Well, the seats have held up well, as does the armrest. Sunroof still works fine. They got a massive trunk and a lot of room in the back seat. They truly are executive sports cars. That's why they sell 40-something thousand a year in the United States. You want a nice, luxurious car. Now, they're relatively expensive when they're new, so he bought it used. Now, he didn't get a deal like I did. We got one with 60,000 miles for $3 grand, right? He traded in the car and did this. He's into this thing about $18,000. But when you consider, realize this thing was 38 grand up when it was brand new, and even Kelly Blue Book says it's worth about $15,000 today. So with his $18,000, he did decent. He traded in. He got rid of his old Camry that was all old and worn out, and decided to upgrade and go a little bit fancier. Now, being 13 years newer than my wife's ES300, there's a lot of upgrades on this thing, you can see, right? It's a lot snazzier. It's got the start-stop. I don't particularly like that. Now, it does still have an actual emergency brake, though. I like that. It has various parking and driving warning systems that hers doesn't have. It doesn't have a tape deck anymore, but it's got a CD player. And it also has heated and air conditioning seats, which my wife's car doesn't have. So here we go. It's already connected. We'll do a standalone diagnosis. Now it's going to decode it. And so we know it's ES350, 2014, 2GRFE, 6-cylinder engine. All right, and we will do a scan. Scan all the systems. And while we're doing it, we'll take a look around. I mean, it is a clean car. It doesn't have any of those sticky tops that some of them got. This was one that was made right. Realized this thing was made in Japan. So you've got 3 different memories for seats for 3 different drivers. Now, as you can see, it's got a few trouble codes. It's got 15 of them. So let's start over here. The ECM is the main thing you're worried about, the engine. Startability fault. That often happens with these stupid keyless remotes. Just ignore that. Toyotas and Lexuses do all that time when they know it starts fine. One less worry. The nothing code that these things get all the time. So now 7 of these codes are the GPS system. I mean, really, who gives a crap about these old old-fashioned GPS systems. After all, we got cell phones with Google and stuff. You don't need this stuff. Those things are all backdated. The software half the time isn't all that great. They all kinds of problem. Sonar ECU, air conditioner ECU, main body USB fault. We'll erase them just for kicks, but nobody really cares about that stuff anymore. Codes itself, so we'll go to the CSR. Intuitive parking assist. Those systems never work all that well. For the intuitive parking assist, sensors, center sensors, he did smack it all up when he fell asleep. Now, maybe the guys fixed it right and just didn't reset it, so we'll erase those codes. They could have not reset them, or maybe they just didn't fix it right. That's where all this technology costs you a fortune as an owner. If you get in a wreck, all that safety equipment, it's going to get smacked up if you smack the front off and tear the bumper off, and you got to change bearings and struts. And a lot of times, they're either not fixed right at all, or the guys who fix them put the parts on but didn't reset them or anything. So, we'll see what happens after we erase it. We'll go back to the main data. We'll see if it comes back after a road test. Now, the TPMS is another one for the stupid tire pressure monitoring. Those systems often break down from the batteries going bad. See, the trouble code is transmitter ID 2 not received, so one of the transmitters, the battery's gone. Who cares? Tire pressure gauges are cheap. Why spend money on that? We'll erase it anyways. Probably come back. The last codes are telematic codes. More crazy technology. Trouble code here is replace backup battery. Okay, the backup battery on the stupid telematics is worn out. People don't even use half of those things anyway, so we'll just erase that for now. Now, we'll go to the ECM and we'll look at live data. Put on live data and we'll start her up. Remember, black's good, red's bad, and our flow sensor's good. Looking at stuff here. The two catalytic converters are working fine. They both have the same temperature, front and back. Generally, Toyota and Lexus products don't have a problem with their catalytic converters. We use good gas, drive it. Normally, the things will last forever. They're not like, say, Nissans, Infinitis that eat up catalytic converters as they age. These really don't. Let's see the target air-fuel ratio, 0.998, and the actual one is 998, 999. Sometimes it's just a tiny bit off. It's almost perfect. Say some of the parking assist is because it's flashing and the owner's walking around, so he's making that beep, so we know that part's working. So I'm assuming the code won't come back after a road test because I think they just forgot to clear the codes when they repaired the car. I see that all the time. Body shops, they'll fix stuff, but they don't have this equipment. Use a cheap scan tool and that won't set back codes for those things. You need a fancy scan tool like this Autel to do all that safety stuff. A little scan tool isn't going to do it. You need a big one to do anything that has to do with any of those safety devices. So let's close the hood, take for a spin. You just have to reset the maintenance required stuff on it. Back it up. Backup cameras, decent camera. Not as strong as some of the modern ones are, but it's decent. First thing I notice is baby smooth. Idles like a dream. That was a big hole in the road. You can't blame the car on that. Still super smooth. Okay, it's 10 years old. Handles fine. Kind of like riding a magic carpet ride. We'll take it to a little drag strip. I can hear a little vroom. It's starting to wear. Hey, you're going to change 3 wheel bearings. Change all 4. They're all worn the same. It's such a nice, luxurious car that little hum of that last wheel bearing would kind of bother me. I wouldn't like it. That's one disadvantage of a really nice luxury car. When something little goes wrong, it's going to bother you because you're going to hear it. Now we'll look behind us. There's nobody coming, so we can come to a stop this time. Wait for the guy in front of us to move a little, and here we go. Right? The traction control kicked in and made it stop squealing, but it did have a little squeal. It's a really fun vehicle to drive around. Look, we're going 40. Let's say you got to pass something. Forward. Picks up nicely. Makes a nice sound too. Realize that the ES series were the first Lexus to be front-wheel drive. The original one, 400s, they were V8s all rear-wheel drive because originally they sent a bunch of Japanese guys to California. They came to the conclusion Americans want big V8 rear-wheel drive car that doesn't break, and they built it. Like the second year they sold in the United States, they outsold Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Porsche combined. So they obviously were onto something. They were smart enough to realize, hey, Americans don't mind a front-wheel drive car if it's got this kind of zip and quality, so they've been making them ever since. They still make the ES series. As the saying goes, If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in this case, improve it little by little over time. Don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Now, if you were driving this car around, you probably have no idea that's got 158,000 miles on it, but it does. I don't care about the mileage on it. I get in this car and I drive to California, although I changed that wheel bearing before because that little bit of humming in a car like this would drive me nuts. You change 3, you might as well change all 4. And of course, on twisty roads, hey, this thing is a ball to drive. We'll get our scan tool out here, see if any of those nutty codes for the measuring how close you are to cars went bad or not. And none of them did come back. The only thing came back was the tire pressure monitoring sensor because it's probably got a bad battery in it. All those sensors, they're showing they're still working. I noticed when he was walking around the car, it was showing me the side and then the front, so it knew what was going on. They just forgot to reset it when they did the work when he fell asleep and ran into the middle of the road. The only problem with this car really was it's so smooth and quiet that he fell asleep when he was driving it and ran into something. And that's how comfortable these things are. Have some coffee when you're driving them because they're so smooth and quiet when you're driving down the road. 150,000 miles is nothing on one of these things if you change the oil regularly. Those transmissions that they have in our 6 speeds are pretty much bulletproof. It still shifts like a dream, runs like a dream. It just needs 1 wheel bearing. That's the only thing it needs. You don't have to do it right away, but in a car this nice, it would drive me nuts. So if you're looking for one of these used, you could save an awful lot of money over buying a brand new one, and they've got a lot of life in them. They can go 200, 300, 400,000 miles. Long as the original owner changed the oil and filter in the engine, they pretty much are indestructible unless you run into things. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.